everybody, welcome to the first episode of Off the Shelves. This is my new show where I'm going to be talking about some of the movies that have been released recently on DVD and Blu-ray. Now, unlike my other shows, this show probably will not be every single week, being that not a whole lot of movies get released every single week. There might only be one or two, so I'll probably save this episode up to be at least once a month, but maybe every couple weeks, depending. Maybe we'll have a few Tuesdays here and there with a lot of major releases that I would like to talk about. Something else that I'm going to do with these episodes as well is I'm going to give my own little rating system. So I've never really been a big fan of the numeric rating system or the letter rating system and everything like that. So what I've kind of come up with is I'm going to talk about all these different movies, and I'm going to keep it very simple. I'm either going to tell you to skip it, Netflix it, or buy it. So without further ado, the first movie that I'm going to be discussing is 13 Hours. So this is Michael Bay's most recent movie, and it stars James Badge Dale and John Krasinski. And the synopsis of this movie is that on September 11, 2012, Islamic militants attacked the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya, killing the ambassador and officer for the Foreign Service. And then stationed less than 1 mile away are members of the Annex security team, former soldiers assigned to protect operatives and diplomats in the city. As the assault rages on, the 6 men engage the combatants in a fierce firefight to save the lives of the remaining Americans. So Michael Bay is one of those directors where just about every movie that he comes out with, people tend to groan and people shit all over him. Now, I'm not as hard on Michael Bay as most people are. He definitely deserves all the hate and all the criticism that he gets for the Transformers movies, because the first one is the only one that is worth anything. But a lot of his older movies are really good. I love the Bad Boys movies. I love The Rock. Armageddon's some stupid fun. I didn't hate Pearl Harbor as much as everybody else. And even though I think it would have been a lot better had they kept the tone that they had the first act of the movie, I thought The Island was actually pretty cool. Now, this movie, 13 Hours, by far, is probably Michael Bay's most restricted movie. A lot of his visual style and a lot of his giveaways that you can tell it's Michael Bay directing this movie, he really restricts himself a lot more in this movie. Now, it still has a lot of his style. There's still a lot of slow motion. There's still a lot of slow pans across the American flag and stuff like that. But as far as taking a movie seriously, this is probably his best effort in a very long time. Now, the acting in this movie, first and foremost, is very, very good. Everybody, even John Krasinski, who's known for, I think he was in The Office, he's known for comedic talent. He's really good in this dramatic kind of action role. And by far the standout is James Badge Dale and his character. He's really kind of like the badass leader of the group. And to my surprise, really, Michael Bay pays a lot of respectful tribute to the people involved. A lot more than what he did in Pain and Gain, which he kind of just turned a comedy out of a real-life tragedy. So he does a really good job at restricting himself and keeping serious and telling a really good story and paying respect to the people who were involved in this event back in 2012. The action is directed really, really well. Like I said, all the acting is good. There's a lot of jokes here and there, but they're well-placed. They're not in bad taste. As far as really my only negative that I can say about this movie, it goes on for at least 30 minutes, way too long. I mean, they could have shaved off the last 20 or 30 of this minutes of this movie and kind of punched up here and there and edited it a little bit better, and it would have flowed and made a lot better movie. I mean, towards the end, I kind of just got fatigued just watching people wait around and shooting here and there, just waiting for something to happen. So if they could have cut at least 25 minutes off of this movie, I think it would have ended up being a lot better. But if you're if you're a fan of Michael Bay, you will like this movie. And if you're not a fan of Michael Bay, give this one a shot, because he might surprise you. So I'm going to give this one a buy it. Next up is Everybody Wants Some. Now, this is directed by Richard Linklater, and this is basically his spiritual follow-up to Dazed and Confused. And it stars Will Brittain, Zoe Dutch, and Ryan Guzman. And the story just follows. It says, in 1980 Texas, college freshman, played by Blake Jenner, meets his new baseball teammates, an unruly group of disco-dancing, skirt-chasing partiers. So, pretty basic premise for a comedy, but what really draws you in with this movie is if you're a fan of Dazed and Confused, and you know about all the really good things about that movie, like, it really sets up and really captures the feel of that era. You know, the Dazed and Confused was in the 70s, so it captures the 70s. It did a really good job at capturing what it really was like in high school, and it has a phenomenal soundtrack. Now, all those three things really carry over into Everybody Wants Some. This one takes place in the 80s, and it really captures the feel and the style and just the essence of the 80s. You know, for my little small stint in college, it does capture the feel of just that, you know, the first couple of days leading up to classes. Again, the soundtrack is awesome. With comedies, you're not really looking for stellar acting performances necessarily, but everybody who is in this movie does a pretty good job. A lot of people are going to be wondering, is this as funny or as classic as Dazed and Confused? And though this movie, it's enjoyable throughout, and it's definitely worth watching, it's not quite up to the par of, you know, the timeless appeal of Dazed and Confused. You know, like I said, I enjoyed this movie, but Dazed and Confused had just some classic scenes that you always remember. You know, you got Ben Affleck running around trying to paddle the kids, and Parker Posey is like the head senior girl hazing all of the new freshmen. And just this movie didn't have any of those classic scenes that you're going to walk away remembering and wanting to revisit all the time. You know, it's funny, but it's not a hold your chest and roll around on the floor type of funny. So if you're a fan of Dazed and Confused, if you're a fan of Richard Linklater, you'll give it a shot, and I'm sure you'll walk away enjoying it like I did. But like I said, if you're expecting a gut-busting comedy, wait for Netflix for this one. Next up is Green Room. Now, this was written and directed by Jeremy Saulnier, and it stars the late Anton Yelchin, Imogen Poots, and the great Patrick Stewart. And the movie focuses on a punk rock band who find themselves attacked by neo-Nazi skinheads after witnessing a murder at a remote club. Now, this movie totally came out of nowhere for me. All I had to hear about was, okay, there's this movie coming out with Patrick Stewart, and he plays the leader of a gang of neo-Nazis. And I was sold. So I did see this in theaters, and this movie is a really engaging, tense, and brutal thriller. You know, it basically, the whole movie takes place in this club where the punk rock band with, you know, Anton Yelchin is pretty much under siege. You know, they witnessed the murder, and the neo-Nazis who are owners of the club are trying to keep them there, figure out how to get rid of them and how to dispatch of the situation, while everybody in the punk rock band is trying to figure out how to get out and how to, you know, live through the situation. You know, you're on your seat pretty much the whole movie. You don't know where it's going to go until it gets there. You don't see a lot of things coming. If there's anything negative really that I had to pull out of this movie that I could criticize, there's a few decisions that they make in the movie as far as the characters that are a little stupid. You know, those classic kind of like almost a horror movie decision where you go in the attic instead of going out the front door. And I think they should have used Patrick Stewart just a little bit more. He's not really underused in this movie. He has a lot of screen time, but, you know, there's never enough Patrick Stewart. You know, that guy is brilliant. And unfortunately, this was one of his last performances, but Anton Yelchin does a really good job. You know, Imogen Poots is good. They have really good chemistry. They've been in a few movies together. So the acting's really good in this. This is not for the faint of heart. So if you're not into bloody, crazy violence, don't pick up Green Room. But if you like being on the edge of your seat, if you like tense, slow-boiling thrillers, get up now and go and buy it, because Green Room is awesome. Moving on to London Has Fallen. Now, this is the sequel to 2013's Olympus Has Fallen, which was a big surprise for a lot of people, myself included. You know, they had Olympus Has Fallen and they had White House Down come out around the same time, and it was that both kind of the White House siege movies. And anybody who saw the trailer and knew what the idea was did not expect anything from Olympus Has Fallen. Olympus Has Fallen was a great throwback to those dumb, mindless 90s action movies. You know, it was directed by Antoine Fuqua, who's an awesome action director. And Gerard Butler really takes hold of his role and gives you a character who doesn't feel like he's a John McClane ripoff, but be as badass as John McClane. So, Olympus Has Fallen, I was a big fan of. Now, London Has Fallen is directed by Babak Najafi, so a different director. And everybody returns for this one. Gerard Butler, Aaron Eckhart, Morgan Freeman, Angela Bassett, they're all back. And the story of London Has Fallen is after the death of the British Prime Minister, the world's most powerful leaders gather in London to pay their respects, Without warning, terrorists unleash a devastating attack that leaves the city in chaos and ruins. Secret Service agent Mike Banning springs into action to bring U.S. President Benjamin Asher to safety. When Asher falls into the hands of the sinister organization, it's up to Banning to save his commander-in-chief from a horrible fate. So London Has Fallen. Like I said, the first one was directed by Antoine Fuqua, and this one is not. And you can tell. The action is not nearly as awesome. The directing is not nearly as good. The performances are not nearly as good. The CG is god-awful. This is the definition of lazy sequel for a cash grab. Olympus Has Fallen was a surprising success, and they knew they wanted to get it back out there and get a few more dollars out of it. And they couldn't figure out a way to make it as fun or as enjoyable as the first one. It's not garbage. There is some good parts here and there. There's some cool action here and there. And Gerard Butler still does his best to keep that badass character, in the movie. But amongst that, it's just, this is not worth your time. Especially if you didn't even like Olympus Has Fallen. If you didn't like the first one, definitely don't even bother with this one. But if you're like me and you thought, Olympus Has Fallen was just this cool, fun throwback to the 90s, this one's not going to meet their expectations of walking away from Olympus Has Fallen. So definitely skip this one. Next up is Eddie the Eagle. Now this was directed by Dexter Fletcher, and it stars Taron Egerton and Hugh Jackman. And I gotta tell you guys, I enjoyed the shit out of Eddie the Eagle. I didn't really know anything about it. I just kind of saw it on the shelf. I like Hugh Jackman and just about everything he plays in. I recently just gave Kingsman a second chance, and I don't know why I didn't care for it the first time, but Kingsman was just a badass Matthew Vaughn movie, and Taron Egerton played in Kingsman, so I saw Taron Egerton, saw Hugh Jackman, and said, okay, let me give this Eddie the Eagle a shot. And damn, I'm glad I did, because even with all the great movies I have on this list, this one is probably my favorite. And the story of Eddie the Eagle is cut from the Olympic ski team. British athlete Michael Eddie Edwards travels to Germany to test his skills at ski jumping. Fate leads him to Bronson Perry, played by Hugh Jackman, a former ski jumper who now works as a snowplow driver. Impressed by Edwards' spirit and determination, Perry agrees to train the young underdog, and despite an entire nation counting him out, Eddie's never-say-die attitude takes him all the way to a historic and improbable showing at the 1988 Winter Olympics. So, Taron Egerton plays Eddie the Eagle Edwards, who is, like I said, he's the British skier who in 1988 became the first competitor to represent Great Britain in the Olympic ski jumping. And from start to finish, this movie is just enjoyable and fun and inspiring. It's one of those underdog stories where, I was grinning from start to finish. Taron Egerton is a really engaging guy, and he really tugs on your heartstrings in this movie. And Hugh Jackman is as great as he always is. This is a movie where I don't care how bad of a day you've had or what kind of mood you're in. If you pop this in, there's no way by the end of it you're still going to be in a bad mood. I was smiling from ear to ear. So, there's nothing more I can say about recommending Eddie the Eagle. This was probably the biggest surprise that I picked up recently. It might be the biggest surprise of the year so far for me, being that I didn't even know what the hell this movie was. But if you just like good, classic, feel-good movies, definitely go out and get Eddie the Eagle right now. Go out and buy Eddie the Eagle. Moving on to 10 Cloverfield Lane. Now, this was directed by first-time director Dan Trachtenberg, and it's produced by J.J. Abrams, who directed the first Cloverfield movie. And it stars John Goodman, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and John Gallagher Jr. 10 Cloverfield Lane was that movie that they advertised, and it came out of nowhere. Cloverfield was this really big, it had this crazy marketing campaign back when that movie came out, where they played the trailer in front of Transformers, I believe, where it just showed kind of like one of the opening scenes of the movie with this monster just wrecking shop in New York City. And the trailer didn't give the movie a title, it didn't give any actors or release dates or anything like that. It just showed the clip and then cut off. And it really got everybody buzzing. And Cloverfield, I think it got kind of a mixed response. I like Cloverfield. It was a cool, different take on the monster movie. I'm not a huge fan of the found footage type movies, but that's one of the few that I actually do enjoy. So sticking with their crazy marketing campaign and the genius of J.J. Abrams, they did kind of the same thing with this movie. You know, they came out and they're playing this trailer and this tense, bottled movie thriller, and then all of a sudden at the end it just pops up 10 Cloverfield Lane, and everybody's like, wait, what the hell? It's a Cloverfield movie? And they released the trailer to this movie that nobody knew was in production, nobody knew was shooting, and nobody knew was coming out. And I think it was like a month before the movie came out was the first trailer. So you get this trailer laid on you, and you're like, holy shit, this movie is coming out next month. 10 Cloverfield Lane is it's not a sequel to Cloverfield, first and foremost. It's just in the same universe as Cloverfield, from what I can tell. It doesn't really give you any answers as far as that. I don't really know if this is just a different area in the same universe as Cloverfield while the first movie's going on, or maybe J.J. Abrams is just going to produce some of these different movies and just give the Cloverfield tag to it, just to kind of have some kind of connective tissue towards them all, but they'll all be different. You know, you had your monster movie in the last one, and this one's kind of like your bottle movie. But it follows the story of, after surviving a car accident, Michelle, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, wakes up to find herself in an underground bunker with two men. Howard, played by John Goodman, tells her that a massive chemical attack has rendered the air unbreathable, and their only hope of survival is to remain inside. Despite the comforts, Howard's controlling and menacing nature makes Michelle want to escape, and after taking matters into her own hands, the young woman discovers the truth about the outside world. Now, this is another one that I saw in theaters, and this was a really great, slow burn, tense thriller. You know, John Goodman playing a bad guy is awesome. He's usually known for kind of the witty, goofy, fun-loving kind of guys, but John Goodman can act his ass off. And the movie does a really good job at keeping you asking questions. You never quite know if John Goodman is crazy or if he's just really being that protective of them and there really is something menacing going on outside this bunker. Or you don't know if maybe Mary Elizabeth Winstead is, just being too paranoid. But the movie just keeps you guessing and keeps you guessing until the end. And it takes some really cool and crazy turns here and there. And though the ending may divide people, especially if you don't know, the first movie and you don't know what to expect with the name Cloverfield, the ending may divide people. But if you're a fan of Cloverfield, if you're a fan of everything else that J.J. Abrams have done, especially if you're a fan of John Goodman, definitely go out and buy this, because this is one of those few movies that come out that I can honestly say you don't really know where it's going until it gets there. Alright, moving on to a few animated movies. So first up is Zootopia. Now this was directed by Byron Howard, Rich Moore, and Jared Bush, and it had the voice talents of Jason Bateman, Jennifer Goodwin, Idris Elba, and J.K. Simmons. And it follows the story of, from the largest elephant to the smallest shrew, the city of Zootopia is a mammal metropolis where various animals live and thrive. When Judy Hopps becomes the first rabbit to join the police force, she quickly learns how tough it is to enforce the law. Determined to prove herself, Judy jumps at the opportunity to solve a mysterious case. Unfortunately, that means working with Nick Wilde, a wily fox who makes her job even harder. So, me and Holly took the kids to go see Zootopia when this came out in theaters. And I gotta say, Zootopia is one of probably the best animated movies I've seen in a long time. This is one of the few animated movies that really appeal 100% to adults and appeal 100% to kids. There was things in there that the kids laughed at and loved, and there was things in there that only adults would get, and it kept me laughing and kept me smiling and kept me engaged through the whole movie. And the voice talents in this movie are some of the best you're going to see. Jason Bateman, I don't think he's ever done voicing in an animated movie before, but he does awesome as Nick Wilde, just this crazy kind of funny con artist. And Idris Elba's got an awesome voice, and J.K. Simmons, he's going to be in my next movie that I'm going to talk about, is always great. But just the unlikely partnership between this rabbit and this con artist fox just keeps you laughing throughout the whole movie. And there's a lot of little in-jokes in there, and there's a nice little Breaking Bad nod, which you guys know I'm going to love. I really enjoyed the mystery that they went along trying to solve in this movie, and it really kept me engaged the whole time. I never really felt bored. I never really checked out. And the social commentary that the story kind of carries into on today's society, I appreciated. Unlike a lot of times where I feel like I'm getting beat over the head, they do it really well in this movie. So, Definitely, this is my favorite animated movie of the year so far. It might be my favorite animated movie in a few years. Like I said, it's perfect for adults and kids. If you have kids, definitely go out, buy this movie today, and put it in. Your family will love it. Next up is Kung Fu Panda 3. And this was directed by Jennifer Yu Nelson and Alessandro Carloni. And it had the voice talents of Jack Black, Bryan Cranston, Dustin Hoffman, and J.K. Simmons, among quite a few others. And this is the third chapter in Kung Fu Panda, and the story of this one is that living large and loving life, Po realizes that he has a lot to learn if he's going to fulfill the next challenge from his beloved instructor. After reunited with his long-lost father, played by Bryan Cranston, Po must transition from student to teacher and train a group of fun-loving, clumsy pandas to become martial arts fighters. Together, the Kung Fu Brethren unite to take on the evil Kai, played by J.K. Simmons, a supernatural warrior who becomes stronger with each battle. Now, Kung Fu Panda, the first one, came out and surprised the hell out of me. At the time especially, I wasn't really much into animated movies. I kind of felt that I'd grown out of them. But Jack Black playing Po is just absolute perfection. I mean, that guy just embodies that fucking panda. And I loved Kung Fu Panda 1. Kung Fu Panda 2 was equally as enjoyable for me. And even though they released this movie in January, kind of put a bit of a paranoia into me that maybe this third Kung Fu Panda is not that great, this one's just as good as the first two, if not my favorite of the three. This is a great third chapter. And again, I took Holly and the kids to go see this, and we laughed throughout the whole movie. I mean, there was just laugh after laugh after laugh. You know, all four of us were just grinning ear to ear from start to finish. The voice acting is great. Like I said, Jack Black just embodies that panda. Bryan Cranston is an awesome addition as Poe's father, and they have a lot of back and forth with, all the little goofy panda things, where they're fat and they're rolling around and everything. And J.K. Simmons plays a great menacing villain. And I really hope this isn't the last Kung Fu Panda because, like I said, man, this is just a great upward swing that this Kung Fu Panda series is on. So especially if you love the first two, but even if you just like animated movies in general or you want something fun to watch with your kids, go out and buy Kung Fu Panda 3 because it is a great, great animated movie. Alright, moving on from all those great movies that I was talking about, we have The Boy. Now, The Boy is directed by William Brant Bell. Hopefully his last job as a director. And it stars Lauren Cohen, who everybody knows from Walking Dead. She plays Maggie. And Rupert Evans. And it follows the story of a young American named Greta. Takes a job as a nanny for an 8-year-old boy in a remote English village. To her surprise, Greta learns that the child of her new employers is a life-size doll. They care for the doll as if it was human, which helps the couple to cope with the death of their own son 20 years earlier. When Greta violates a list of strict rules, a series of disturbing and inexplicable events bring her worst fears to life, leading her to believe the doll is actually alive. And if you couldn't tell from my introduction to this movie, this is one of the worst movies that I've seen in a very, very long time. Something to expect with a lot of these videos, guys. I really don't go and see or even sit at home and watch a lot of bad movies. I've watched movies long enough to know what to look out for. And for the most part, I'm usually pretty good at picking out things that I'm going to enjoy. And, I might have a few here and there that are kind of in the middle for me where I just kind of like it instead of loving it. Or I might be disappointed here and there. But for the most part, I really avoid a lot of movies that I know I'm just going to walk out hating. And for whatever reason, I decided to give The Boy a chance. No. Just stay away from this one. It starts off intriguing. And it starts off engaging. And, the premise is interesting, and you're really curious as to where it's going to go. There's a plot twist coming, so really you're just hanging on waiting to see what this plot twist is going to be. But the plot of this movie just gets weaker as the minutes go on. Lauren Cohen does a good job. I like her as an actress, but she can't do anything else with this movie. She couldn't have saved this one. When the plot twist finally comes, you're already kind of wearing thin with your patience, and you're wearing thin with how much longer you're going to be able to stay on board for this movie. But that plot twist just throws you over the edge into stupidity. I mean, there was so many other ways that they could have taken that could have redeemed this movie, and actually could have made it somewhat worth a watch. and worth your 90 minutes, but not the way that they decided to take it. So this is one of those classic, what I'll call stupid white people horror movies, where you're just laughing at the screen almost at how dumb some of these people are, and how dumb some of the decisions that they make are, and just how dumb this story gets. So, at all costs, avoid the hell out of The Boy. Alright, my last movie for this episode is going to be 999. Now, 999 was directed by John Hillcoat, and it stars a pretty amazing cast. You got Casey Affleck, Woody Harrelson, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Aaron Paul, Kate Winslet, Norman Reedus, Anthony Mackie, and Clifton Collins Jr. Badass cast. All around awesome actors. The story of 999 is that bullets fly on the Atlanta freeway as armed thieves make their getaway following a bank robbery in broad daylight. Unhappy with the results, ruthless gangster Irina Vlaslov orders the men to pull off one more job. One member of the team is Marcus Belmont, played by Mackie, a crooked cop who gets saddled with Chris Allen, who is Casey Affleck, his new but incorruptible police partner. As Belmont and his cohorts lay the groundwork for the heist, they come up with the devious plan to use Allen as their pawn. So basically, to give explanation to the title, they're told to go off and pull off this one more heist, which is like this impossible heist that they're not going to be able to do. But being that a couple of them are dirty cops and they have this cop background, they said, listen, all the cops in town, if there's a 999 call, they all leave whatever they're doing and they rush to the 999 call, which is an officer gets killed. So they decide that, okay, we're going to lure Casey Affleck and we're going to kill him, and we're going to put out the 999 call. Everybody's going to go to save Casey Affleck or go to avenge him, and then we can do this bank robbery. That's the basic idea of the movie. It's a really dark and gritty movie. If you know John Hillcoat's movies, you know that he doesn't really pull any punches. There's great performances. Like I said, the cast is not really wasted as far as their performances. Everybody does a great job. And there's this really kind of slow, tense, infectious paranoia throughout this movie, where you're kind of following the story of the bad guys for the most part. Aside from Casey Affleck, there's not really anybody in this movie who's a good guy. They're all kind of unredeemable. There's a few that you like following, but for the most part, they're all pretty bad dudes. So, knowing where they go and knowing what they plan on doing, you kind of have this paranoia throughout, waiting for crazy shit to go down. The movie just loses some momentum towards the end. And it's still a good movie, but it doesn't quite live up to the cast that they got. It's almost like they got this story, and they put the movie into production, and they had like a dream cast that they really wanted, and then they kind of shit themselves that they actually got all the cast, and they didn't quite have the movie to hold up that cast. But like I said, it keeps you kind of guessing throughout where things are going to go. It just loses a lot of its momentum and its steam towards the third act, especially with the scene. I'm not going to spoil anything, but there's a scene towards the end with Chiwetel Ejiofor getting stopped in his car by Clifton Collins Jr. After spending the whole movie with Chiwetel's character, and he's really the one that I was even though he's a bad guy, I was kind of rooting for him. Some of the way that scene plays out, I just didn't quite buy it. And then from then on until the end, I was kind of checked out. But if you like kind of dark, gritty cop and robber type movies and heist movies and stuff like that, give it a shot, because you might like it more than I did. 999, it was worth watching for sure. I just wish that the story and especially the third act would have been good enough to kind of justify the amazing cast that they were given in this movie. So, 999, wait for Netflix. Well, that does it for my first episode of Off the Shelves, guys, so I hope you enjoyed this one. As always, thank you for listening, and leave any comments down below on SoundCloud or on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook at Cody Leach. You can find me on Twitter at CJL Lone Wolf. Just go ahead and follow me on there. And like I said, as always, if you have any viewer questions whatsoever, it doesn't have to be movie related. It can be video games, or it doesn't even really have to be entertainment related. You can ask me whatever you want, and I will always find time to answer them. I'll either answer them at the end of my episodes, of my Monday movie news episodes, or I will answer them in a Q&A episode if I get enough of them built up. But like I said, thank you for listening, guys, and I will see you next time.